That really resonated with my mum. Not the actual graph, but she was like, but that's so many different wools you would need, and that's a lot of colours, and they've all changed, and that's gone from blue to red. That they are not complementary colours. She was going, and it was until it was knitted. I don't think she got it, and then suddenly it was like, oh, climate is changing.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Hello there. My name is Kit Rackley. My pronouns are they, them, and this is Coffee and Geography. The aim of the show is to get to know, explore and celebrate the diverse and intersectional range of people on this rock we call home and their love and passions of it. We'll find out why guests identify as geographers, and if they don't exactly, we'll have fun exploring all the myriad of ways that connects their life to geography. So, pour your favourite brew, get cosy and listen in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at CoffeeJogPod. Off we go. Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm again breaking the run of UK geography teachers, but talking to someone who is certainly no less of a geographer. Someone who I had the immense pleasure of working with during a spell in the climate and energy science sector, but definitely that was too brief. So therefore I'm delighted to speak to her today, Dr Hannah Bloomfield. Hello!
Hello! Oh, it's good to see you again.
It's so good to see you. Now, Hannah knows the area I'm in very, very well because she too, like me, attended the School of Environmental Sciences at the University of East Anglia. There she gained a degree in natural sciences and she realised that she was really interested in the renewable energy and climate change issues. Now, Hannah has had a few months travelling and then she was lucky enough to be offered a PhD place at Reading studying exactly those things. Still working in the energy-meteorology group at Reading 4 years later, forecasting renewable energy from days to decades ahead. Wow, yes, I remember all that stuff. And when Hannah's not working, she loves being outdoors, although not always for active things, and her dream day is curling up in the back garden with a book and a large cocktail. You don't have a cocktail on you right now though, do you?
I don't. I thought, as it's kind of 9 a.m, I thought I'd behave, and we've just got a tea today.
What is your favourite cocktail, just out of interest? Do you have one?
Yeah. Oh, I love an espresso martini. I know. Oh, if you're going to do it properly, right? Get something complicated, and I will admit, not very good at making them myself, but delicious.
There you go. So perhaps we should have called this Coffee and Geography and Cocktails. That actually has a nice kind of ring to it, although a bit of a tongue twister. So what are you actually drinking this May morning then, Hannah?
Oh, well, this morning I've got a classic, Twinings Breakfast Tea, but I made a recent discovery that so my partner's just gone vegan, so we've got a lot of mysterious milks in the house. And I discovered that if you buy the Alpro Barista almond milk and put it in your tea, it tastes like your tea is full of hobnobs. So that's now my life, feeling like I'm eating biscuits while I drink my tea.
Oh, I'm gonna have to try that. Yeah, we've done the same sort of thing at our house. We've gone like we've shifted our diet towards a vegan one, so it'll be wrong to say we've got a vegan diet. And so we've switched mostly to oat milk. So I've got oat milk in my tea. And yeah, you're right. The kind of the oat milks, the almond milks, they do have that bit of natural sweetness to them. And I really, really like it. But now, unfortunately, the kids have gotten wind of it and are now guzzling all of our oat milk rather than the cow's milk, which is meant to be for them. But right. So whenever we meet up next time, you're going to have to demonstrate. You're going to have to provide me with a cuppa because I want to be drinking hobnobs and see what that tastes like.
Absolutely, it's been a lockdown revelation.
Oh, awesome! So you have been a little bit all over the place because we're going to talk about your sense of place first to start with. So as we've already mentioned in the intro, you were in the Norwich area for a while because you attended the University of East Anglia. Then you went down into Reading and spent quite a bit of time there working with the folks at Reading Uni. And now you've moved up to very, very recently to North Leeds in the Headingley area. So yeah, you've gone travelling a fair bit. So your identity has probably therefore been shaped by numerous places. So how can we approach this? you can talk about it however way you wish. Maybe you would start with where you're from, then Norwich, then go in chronological order, or maybe you just want to go by your identity and take location by that. But how do you feel that your identity has been formed by the places that you've spent quite a bit of time in, do you think, Hannah?
Yeah, I think I always, so I'm from Suffolk, so pretty close to East Anglia, it's the county below. And when I went to university, I mean, UEA wasn't actually my first choice, but because I didn't get quite what I wanted in my A levels, but it turned out to be the perfect choice because I think Norwich is still one of my favourite places.
Exactly the same here. Norwich wasn't my first, UEA wasn't my first choice, and yet rest is
Mm.
history.
Yeah, it's got just the campus itself, even though anyone who's been there, it's like breeze block city, right? It's got that feel, but you really do grow to love it, and the lake and everything. And for me, like Norwich just had everything, and the way I studied my degree course was really kind of flexible. Because I did, you said I did natural sciences, but that meant at UEA you could just pick modules from anywhere. And I felt Norwich as a place was kind of like that. It had this kind of city vibe, but also it was kind of like it wasn't a big city. It had this kind of small town thing going on. So however you were feeling, Norwich had something for you, and I think that was kind of like my degree. Really, I was able to pick what I wanted to do, and Norwich worked like that. And Norwich is, having now lived in Reading and lived in Leeds, it's still my favourite place. Um, Reading was I think it's interesting, isn't it? That at different times of your life, when you're doing different things, I think I have some kind of negative feelings towards when I first moved to Reading because I was starting my PhD and it was really hard. Like anyone who's done even an MSc or PhD degrees, they're really difficult. You know,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a commuter belt town, and I felt like it didn't have as much identity. And I didn't, I think, have very much sense of what I wanted with my life, or I was questioning if I'd made the wrong decision moving here, doing all these things because Norwich was so wonderful. But as soon as the PhD was finished and all of that stress was kind of gone, I actually grew to like it quite a bit. Once you have time to get to know somewhere, I think wherever you are can be really kind of nice. Yeah.
That's a kind of really interesting take. Do you think, therefore, is it because you're coming from Suffolk, I guess? You have a kind of more ruralistic kind of feel to your personality, to your identity, and that kind of. So therefore, Norwich kind of fit because you're right. Norwich is this kind of sense that it's got everything a city has, but it does still have that really strange rural community, rural feel about it. It's a bit strange.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It was where my like grandparents grew up. It was really, really rural. So I was very used to being like right out in the sticks, and like East Anglia, you're always so close to the coast, and I hadn't really appreciated that compared to a lot of other places in the country. So you
Yeah,
could just
true.
go to the beach all the time, and loads of different, really beautiful bits of coastline all the way around East Anglia. Whereas yeah, a lot of other places like Reading and Leeds, it's actually a good couple of hour drive to your nearest beach. And it's not necessarily a quiet, nice one like around the East Anglian coast where you could just pretty much be alone on a beach if you wanted to at any time of year.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention any now because I still want those secret spots. Like Holcombe, everybody knows, and they park for God knows how long to get into Holcombe Beach.
Yeah.
Winterton a little bit to the coast, but there are some little sneaky areas where you can go to, which I'm going to keep those to myself. I'll tell you after, and I'll tell you after. So you've not long been in Leeds then, and you're there with your fiance, and congratulations on your pending nuptials there. So how are you fitting into Leeds so far? I mean, I know it's been a bit strange because of lockdowns and everything like that. You probably haven't been able to absorb yourself so much in the Leeds area for the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit strange actually because I moved last March and it's been a bit strange because I haven't really been anywhere. Because we've been quite strict with the lockdown restrictions. We haven't really seen anyone, but I do run quite a bit, so I've been out in the local kind of countryside and things, and it's actually a lot more rural than I was expecting around the edges because we don't live in the centre.
Mm.
We live a bit further out than Headingley, So it's actually quite a lot of green space where we live really near a donkey sanctuary. That's amazing. I was just driving along one day and I was like, oh, hello, there's a lot of donkeys. Wonderful. In the centre, it definitely has that very big city feel. It's the biggest place I've ever lived. And it's quite different. My sense of direction's appalling. So I went in and was just like, oh, no, I don't know where I am.
It's an absolute myth, isn't it, that geographers have a great sense of direction?
Yeah, hand me a map and I might be able to do something. But if you're just doing it based on feel, no idea.
Excellent. Well, actually, we're going to move on to maps now. You mentioned maps. Are you like me where you see any kind of map on a wall, on a poster, on a billboard, you just walk past it, you're compelled to stop and look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a really visual brain, I think. Like, I don't learn very easily from reading things, but you can get so much information on a map.
Yes.
And it's really exciting, actually, if it's something you're not expecting to see on a map. Like, Twitter's amazing for this. You get these people who have made maps of, I don't know, like, I can't think of a good example, but it's like anything you can graphically represent it, and it's so satisfying. I think it sticks in your head better as well when you see something as a map.
Yeah, I cannot, like, traveling in the United States is a great example, because at each or almost every rest area, and when you're walking around in tourist areas, there's usually like massive billboards full of text and writing to tell you about the history and everything like that and what goes on. The Lewis and Clark Trail is like one example of that, but they don't really interest me as much as the map, like just the map of closures due to wildfires or due to bear sightings or something like that. You know, I'm more interested in that kind of stuff. Like, I'm absolutely right, that visual kind of element.
Yeah, definitely. And I also love kids maps, you know, like especially when you're on holiday and like you get these kind of, I don't know, it's almost like, here's your national park, and then you might see a bear here, and it's just, you know, all the pictures and everything. I think it just brings it all to life. Oh, yeah. Team map.
Yes, and like Butlins or even the Alton Towers one with all the rides on, or Chesington or Pleasurewood Hills. All theme parks are available, not just those ones. I've really had to do that while I'm doing this. Right, so what we're going to do, all right, we're going to have a bit of fun, and we're going to do a bit of a map quiz with you. So you say that you don't just like maps, you like kind of fictional maps as well. I know how people are going to picture these, I guess, in their heads because it's a podcast, but I'll put some links down to these maps in the descriptions, all right, so people want to do that. But let's see if we can do this by auditory only. Right, so this is how it's going to work. I'm going to describe aspects of the map, and you're going to guess what you think the map is about. So I've tried to go for ones which are, I wouldn't say the most famous, but ones which shouldn't be too difficult. So I'm not going to go for anything like really abstract that you probably won't know about. Are you up for this then? Bit of a challenge on that morning? Right, so I'm going to play my quiz music. Okay, so the first one in, Hannah, is that the geology of this map is a little bit all over the place. It doesn't really tend to make sense because, for example, one of these places is almost like a peninsula, like a Tibetan Plateau Peninsula, surrounded by mountains on three sides, right? Almost in a square. And this is a place where it's very dangerous, very hot, and the all-seeing eye will be watching you. Do you know what that is?
The all-seeing eye. Are we Lord of the Ringsing?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a map of Middle-earth, and I was describing Mordor.
I agree with you. It doesn't really make sense, does it? The geology there, like.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to figure it out. Like, where's the tectonic shifts taking place, and all that kind of stuff. Right. Okay, so this one, you've got lots of woods and lots of mountains and stuff. One of the woods are called the Shuddering Woods. Ooh. So there's a bit of a hint for you. You have a bridge called Rock Bridge. There's a river called the Great River, the Frozen Lake. There's battlefields on this. And there's a wasteland in the northwest called the Lantern Waste. To get to this place, you've got to go through a wardrobe.
Oh, we're in Narnia!
Yeah, that's right. So, there's a cherry tree right in... Oh, yeah, the cherry tree's right in the middle of the map. That's pretty the only bit I remember, to be honest. Right, there's going to be 5 of these. Here's number 3. Okay, this is loosely based on Manhattan Island, but it's actually split up into 3 large ones. You've got Uptown, Midtown, and Downtown. And it borders the Queens River on the left and the East River on the right. If you look up in the sky, anywhere on this map, you might see a beam of light with a distinct shape calling for help.
Oh, I don't think I know this one.
Right, okay. And within this light is the shape of a creature. The Dark Knight.
Ah, we're in Batman world.
Yeah. So this is Gotham City.
Gotham City. I've got to use the proper words, haven't I? Batman fans are turning in their grave. I just called it Batman world.
Right. Okay. This one's going to be a bit. This one might be the trickiest of the 5, right? So it's based on a real location. It's in the Pacific Ocean, but it's got the name. Its English name is Cloud Island, but its native name is Isla Nublar. And if you set foot on this, it'll be as though you've gone back in time, where large creatures roam free. This is a tricky one.
Is this from Jurassic Park?
Yes, you got it. Yeah. Right. Okay. And the last one, which I think is actually easier than the last one, is this is based on North America, United States, but it's set in a dystopian future. The capital city is located roughly where modern-day Colorado is, and it's split up into a series of districts.
Oh, was this Katniss Everdeen's wonderful Hunger Games world?
Yeah, that's the map of Panem. Wow.
Panem.
Wow, you did it.
Oh,
5 out of 5, Hannah.
I had to have a little bit of help with Batman world, I think, but oh, it's funny as you're saying that, you know, because especially the Narnia one, I love it when you get a book and at the front you open it and they've got a little map of the world you're going to get. And I'm like, I'm going to like this. Whatever's going to happen, I'm going to like this. That is good.
I missed a trick, really, because one of my favourite stories ever is his Dark Material series. So Philip Pullman. And and I loved kind of like comparing like all of the fan-based maps of Lyra's Oxford to modern day Oxford, and I could spend hours just doing that kind of stuff. And
it's great, isn't it? My fiance used to work at Oxford, and when he read them recently and he was like, oh, I was in the building next door to where Lyra went, and you're like, oh, research from Philip Pullman, right? That was a good comparison.
I was going to have a backup map quiz, which was a bit of a cheat, really, because it's not really a map. Well, it's a diagram of the galaxy, and I was going to say, as a galaxy, it's split up into 4 quadrants, and a starship got flung out into the Delta Quadrant, had to make it back to the Alpha Quadrant. Do you know what that one would have been?
Is this Star Trek?
Yeah. Let's just do that, just for... There you go.
Yay, bonus point.
Bonus. Wow, okay. Everybody who has their own bespoke quiz, I don't think you're going to top Hannah's 6 out of 5 there. That was fun. Right. I kind of think it worked. So we've talked about maps then. Do you have a favourite map at all? I mean, you talked about Narnia there, and when you get... So have you ever opened up a fictional book and thought, this map, I could just spend more time looking at this map than I actually reading the story?
I think I potentially did that with Middle Earth, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because some of the Tolkien could be quite heavy, but the maps itself are wonderful. Yeah, I actually like to look at the maps as I work back through, because you discover, they mention these places when you're reading, and I find it hard to store it all in my head, you know, where are we, where are these people, so I just keep flicking back and being like, oh yeah, okay, we know. It makes it feel like you're in on an inside joke when you understand the world and you read the book as well, I think.
Definitely, 100%. In fact, I was just looking over at the bookcase here, because we have a book all about the map of the Middle Earth. So it's called the Middle Earth Atlas. And what the author has tried to explain the geology and the topography and everything such as that of Middle Earth, like to see if they can... And just like we said a bit earlier, it is a little bit tricky to a site like Mordor. She basically came to the conclusion that that for Mordor you must that must have been created artificially. Like Sauron must have kind of done some magic and just lifted this wall of mountains around, because there's no way that could have formed naturally. So
Sauron's just good at terraforming, right? He's got that.
Yeah. Necromancer and a terraformer. That's not a bad CV, to be honest, I must admit. What about a real life map? What would be your... Do you have a certain place, or you've seen a map, an actual real representation of a place which you like?
Yeah, actually, like after I finished my degree, I went traveling for a little bit in my kind of, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I went to Nepal, and I have a map. I guess it's their equivalent OS map, just of the region that I went, because I went hiking basically, and on the map, it's just like it's an OS map, but I have such fond memories associated with it, because I think when you've been to a place and then you look at a map, it kind of, you can look at the map and just bring it all back to life. Like when you're looking at these steep contour lines, and I'm like, oh, I remember climbing that hill. It was really difficult, and just the views. But I think that's my favourite map, my kind of Annapurna Nepal OS. It's very pretty. I get it out sometimes when I'm feeling a bit nostalgic for the travel you could do before 2020.
I love the idea, the concept of a map being your emotional kind of anchor. That sounds, that sings to me, definitely.
Because I think photos can't ever quite do it justice, because whenever I try and take a photo of something, I can't quite get it wide enough, or it doesn't look right compared to how I'm viewing it. But I think with the map, I can kind of, it helps me remember a bit what I was seeing.
It makes total sense. And not everybody, is lucky enough to have that ability where they look at a map and they can visualize the landscape in their head. I mean, I'm quite lucky that I can do that to an extent. And you're right, especially when you've seen the place, you've visited, you've been there, you can definitely kind of close your eyes, and that map just helps you to connect the dots and plug any bits of memory that you might have lost from that particular trip or that particular visit. Do you have the same love for the maps that you create for your work, I wonder? Is that the favourite part of your output, or do you, because it's part of your work, you're like, not so much love for those ones?
Love for some of them, I think. I find it, I definitely find that bit the most satisfying bit, making the like visual outputs of like, where should we put the wind turbines? Where can we forecast it best? For me, that's really great. I think I like the more, so I've recently started looking at Africa and places that I don't know much about at all, to be honest, in terms of their energy or their meteorology or geography or just anything. So I think when I make them for a region where I don't know anything about it, that's much more interesting, because I've spent like 8 years looking at maps of Europe now with all these different energy things, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm a bit done now.
That's and Africa is, it's such an amazing continent, because there is so much going on in so many different parts of Africa, and because obviously it's a huge continent with so many different facets, so many different countries we're doing all different things, and actually much later, it won't be for a while now, but I'm really looking forward to chatting to Sebastian Sterl at VUB, who we know, who we both know quite well, who does, well, actually his work is almost in Northern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa and all that kind of area, where he's looking at renewable energy and promoting renewable energy and that, and working with the local universities and local people, and I'm really excited to talk to him about that. And I don't think people listening realise so much about how progressive and how exciting the kind of renewable energy industry is picking up in that part of the world. When I did this job and I worked to talk to you and talk to Sebastian, people like that, I was amazed of how much progress is being made, and with just a little bit of support from us here in the West to kind of make sure we're not holding them back. I'll tell you what, they can really be having the forefront on and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It really surprised me as well, because when I started to look at places like Kenya and Senegal, it's like, actually, you're developing your energy systems much more cleverly than we ever did it. You've got all this rooftop solar, and you've got these fantastic sites to put your wind turbines and things, because you've got some really good geography that you can place them in. It's amazing, and the company's proactive as well. That's one thing which I found really nice and started looking at it.
So I have to talk about the weather. We both know weather and climate is different, but there's a lot of people thinking, and I know the answer because of obviously my knowledge as well, but there's a lot of people thinking, Hannah's like, oh, like we have had such a lovely summer, lovely spring. You know, April was very warm, and now it's got all cold and drizzly, like so much for climate change and things like that. But what would you say to kind of like, do you ever hear that discussion amongst your friends or with people? You're just like, oh, here we go again, kind of thing, or do you shiver like me? Sometimes I say, oh, it's so cold. It's like, oh, global warming.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting conversation to have with people who kind of don't get the weather and climate distinction, I think, because like, you know, we know weather is what is happening out the window and climate's what's been happening over a much longer period. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I like to throw the anecdotes out. I had some good conversations with my dad trying to remember from when he was young, really, really warm summers. Because that's kind of a counter argument, right? It used to be really warm as well in the past. Like there's this whole thing called climate variability, which is really hard to get people's head around. Because I think we all have much better memory for what's just happened than for what happened a really long time ago. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I do cringe a little bit when you hear but I had a frost in May, so there's no such thing as climate change. And you're like, oh, no.
Which is why some work of... I knew we wouldn't get through this conversation without mentioning, I'm so sorry, Hannah, but this is why the work of your colleague, whose office was just across the hall from you, Ed Hawkins, and his climate stripes work is so important and so good for public engagement. Now, you told me a bit earlier before we started recording, but tell me again, what has he done outside of his office with the climate stripes?
Well, they're on a canvas on the wall opposite his office. I think just as a kind of memory of, I did this. There they are. No, it's really good though. I think they are a great visual tool. Very interestingly, I showed them to my mum, and my mum was kind of like, oh, right, okay. But then I showed one of our colleagues as well, Ellie Highwood at Reading, knitted the climate stripes. She made like a scarf with them all on. And that really resonated with my mum. Not the actual graph, but she was like, but that's so many different wools you would need. And that's a lot of colours. And they've all changed. And that's gone from blue to red. That they are not complementary colours. You know, she was going, and it was until it was knitted, I don't think she got it. And then suddenly it was like, oh, climate is changing.
I love that. Oh my goodness. I mean, I've seen so many creative outputs using the climate stripes. I mean, a lot of people have seen like the Tesla painted, but that's just basically the climate stripes just put on something. But this is exactly, I mean, we're both also very, very keen in education as well, you know, in outreach. Yeah. And we've done, and when we were both in Denmark, crikey, 2 years ago now, you know, we did that little workshop, didn't we, about climate discussion, communication, education. And if that scarf and that wall, because I'm just thinking, because I've got right here, I'm just going to show Hannah, everybody. I might take a photo and put it on Twitter so you can see. So like I've just showing Hannah my wife's crochet Totoro, for example. And hello Totoro. And that was my Totoro impression, if you didn't know. And and actually my wife's only used 3 colours here, you know, the grey, the white and the black. And so then when you immediately thought, you know, and that's tricky enough as it is, just to put those 3 colours together. But yeah, and now I'm just picturing the climate stripes. And if you don't notice anyone listening, just search climate stripes, you'll find them. It's so easy to find. But yeah, now, and then think about, right, if you were going to knit that into a scarf or crochet that into something, have a look, see how many different colours of wool you're going to, and whether you'll be able to find those different colours of wool. That's climate variability, because every single year can be cooler, can be warmer, but as you go through your crochet and your knitting, you're going to get more and more shades of red. I love that. Oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, I think it was because we often think about outreach for younger people, like especially us, right? That's kind of a big part of what you do. But I'd never seen such a good way of engaging with an older woman, basically, who does a lot of knitting, and she finally got it. And I was like, yeah, it's underrepresented outreach community. She suddenly just understood. So that was fun.
Yeah, and I tell you what, that's so important, and this is why one thing, of course, we know which has suffered a lot from the lockdowns and from the coronavirus pandemic is the creative arts and things like that, and the reason why we need the creative arts, whether it's painting, whether it's photography, whether it's drama, whether it's whatever it is, music. We need those, not because it's just good for our souls, it's good for society, because they are different ways and methods of communicating information. And when I was teaching in high school, I tried my very, very best to bring different elements of creative arts into the geography classroom. So I'd use drama quite a lot because I have a second, my second subject specialism was in drama, but I also did some artwork. We also did some music as well.
I agree. It's really important. And it's often skill sets that, like, I have very little creativity. So I find it really interesting to work with people who do, because you just get such a different interpretation on everything.
And you as a team at Reading who've worked on, all the stuff that's helped to go into that. So and that's a very collaborative effort, because you've got Reading, you've got, the Met Office's data, you've got Berkeley Earth's data, all that kind of, and it's just lovely, isn't it, to see all that collaborative effort go viral in the public, and then people putting their own creativity into it. That must give you so much satisfaction.
Yeah, definitely. I think the climate stripes is a good example of how the public engagement really worked, because you give us these apps and things where you can build one for your hometown, or your state, and you can really see how where you live has really changed in your lifetime or in your whole family's lifetime, right? So it's really interesting.
Yeah. And notice, everybody, Hannah and I have been talking positively about climate change, not positively as in a good thing. We know it's not a good thing, but positively as in the way of looking at it, the way of talking about it, because I'm gonna give a shout out back to I think it was episode 3. We had David Alcock come on, who is a geography teacher, and he's doing some research and stuff into things to do with hopeful geography, and he takes and this is the kind of thing he will be very interested in, because this is a very positive, creative, hopeful way of looking into a very controversial, depressing issue, really.
Yeah, it's difficult, right? Because it is a huge problem, like we all know that, but there is a positive way, I think, to talk about it, that people want to take action in a positive way, rather than feeling bullied into it.
Yes. Well, I'm not going to bully you now, Hannah, but I am going to get you to talk about something you might not be so excited, because you say you're terrible at this thing, right? So we call this little segment where you've got to spill the beans, Hannah, all right? And you say that you're terrible at baking, but you're very good at eating other people's cakes and their stuff. So, okay, can you spill the beans? Has there ever been a time when you've had like a complete baking disaster? I mean, have you ever almost burnt down the house, or tell us anything in that respect?
Oh, there's so many times that's happened. No, so my biggest baking disaster was actually during my PhD. We had this kind of system where whoever was having their Viva exam at the end of PhD, someone would make a cake for them. And there's kind of a rota, and I was like, yeah, sure, I can make cakes. Sure, it can't be that hard. It was an absolute disaster, the first one I made. By attempt 3, we had a cake. And then I was like, I'm scared if this is edible. I mean, everyone was very polite and did eat at cake number 3, but oh no, I'm not a baker. You can't be good at everything, right?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I most certainly have. I'm not even going to go there. That's the best thing about being the host and talking about other people, is you can skip yourself. But yeah, it's okay. All right, we'll flip it over then. So, did someone actually produce something that was like heavenly, like for their Viva or something, or maybe that you've tried from someone else, a bit of baking from someone else?
Yeah, so some of the PhD students' cakes were incredible. They used to theme them around whatever the project of the
Oh, I
student
love
was.
that.
So there was one that was like a full like radio sonde, like a little weather balloon that was made. And there's others where people had made the Southern Ocean on a cake or Antarctica out of icing. There's some very talented bakers in the Met department. I was just not one of them.
No, wait a minute. I think I'm cottoning on to what's going on here. I think this is a bit of bribery to help them pass. Surely, it's like we're on a knife edge whether you've defended your PhD or not. Here's some cake. Yeah, all right, you're good.
We get the $4.99 wine out with the cake as well, just to seal the deal.
Absolutely. And just for listeners who are not sure what this process is, in case you've never been through it, so a Viva or a Viva, depending on how you pronounce it, I kind of fluctuate between the two. It can happen at undergrad level, so where maybe you're a couple of % out of the next grade above, which was a shame for me, Hannah, because I got a 2-1, which I got 67%. So, which was really good, but that was 1% of UEA's criteria at the time to have a Viva to see if I can get it up to a first. So that was a shame, but never mind. And then when you do your postgraduate and your PhD and stuff, that kind of stuff is where you've got to like talk about the work that you've been doing. You've got to, be challenged on it. You get evaluated, a bit of critical thinking and stuff like that. And then for everyone to be satisfied that you've done an amazing job. That's really the basics, really.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more complexity to that, but that's really what it was. It's just basically talking good about your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And just checking you did it as well, I think, is the main thing, that someone did do
really
it for you.
It's very rare that anyone doesn't pass it or doesn't successfully defend their PhD. So, because especially the people, they're very aware of all the process that's gone on behind the scenes over those so many years. Right. We are coming towards the end of our chat, Hannah, which is a big shame. So we're going to move on to the last bit, which we call "We Are All Geographers," because as we've alluded to quite a fair bit during this chat, actually, that even if someone listening to this doesn't identify as a geographer themselves, there's so much linked into it. Like we ended up talking about knitting, for example, which was amazing. So what we do is that we get each guest to link themselves to each other by coming up with a word that we tried to link to geography. So last episode we had Stephen Schwab, who had to link the word feminism to geography, which was set by Katie Walter the episode before. For you, Hannah, Stephen has come up with the word faith. So what we need to do is that I'm going to put 30 seconds on the clock, and you've basically just got to talk as much as you can about faith in a geographical sense. And Stephen was quite clear that it doesn't have to be religion with a big R, it doesn't have to be religion with a small r, it could be scientific faith, it could be whatever it is, but just how can we link faith to geography? And you've got 30 seconds to riff as much you like. Do you want some time to think about it, or are we gonna
let's go for it. See what happens.
Right. Your 30 seconds are coming up. Ready, go.
Okay, faith. So first thing that comes to me is you think about these big biblical weather events, like tsunamis, or in a lot of religious texts they talk about like parting of rivers and things which maybe aren't that physical but interesting geographically. But I think faith in a more spiritual way, often people associate it with beautiful places, right? Like trekking and finding remote Buddhist temples, or
I think you nailed it. Yeah. There are so many different facets you can go into that as well. Yeah, and a lot of people go into places and landscapes and almost feeling that that's a spiritual experience in itself. Pilgrimages and things. Yeah, there is so much. I think we could go into that one. It's what we're finding, Hannah, is many people have got too much to say rather than not enough. So
that's a good word. Like that.
It was a good word. Thank you, Stephen, for that. Right then, Hannah. So now's the time for you to come up with a word for our next guest, and our next guest is going to be Helen Young, who's a geography teacher. So can you come up with something the most challenging you can possibly?
Let's think of a obscure, like a trampoline.
Yes, we're going back down to the absolute crazy and bonkers and wonderful now, because we started off with something kind of tangible, and then we went to the abstract, and now we're coming back to just bonkers and crazy, which I love it.
Excellent.
And
I mean, geography teacher, she's going to be pretty good at this, right? So you're going to make it hard.
Knowing Helen, she won't have a problem with this.
Excellent.
So, Hannah, a couple of last things to wrap up then. If people are interested in following you, because they like, oh, Hannah sounds a really interesting person, I'd like to follow the work that she does. Where can people find you on social media?
Twitter is the best place to find me, HC Bloomfield 19. Yeah, that's the only one I use very much, to be honest. But I'm quite active on Twitter. I find it a great resource. So yeah, find me there.
Awesome. And any shout outs you'd like to give? I guess we'll start off with your fiance, who kind of gave us a little bit of technical help at the start.
Yeah, shout out to Leo for working out how to get the headphones to work. Scientists still can't use kit, it turns out. Shout out to all my colleagues at Reading. Haven't seen you for ages.
Yeah,
if any of you listen. Yeah, look forward to seeing you and my old colleagues at UEA. Hopefully get to see all of you soon.
Yeah, and Hannah, obviously, when everything all picks up again and you're in the Norwich area again visiting friends, make sure you give us a shout, and we'll have an actual proper coffee stroke tea over a table rather than over the digital ether.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, it'd be great to see you. Hannah, thank you so much for joining me this morning, and it's just been an absolute lovely excuse to just catch up as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.